Okay, how about that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so welcome everyone. I am super excited to meet all of you. Nice to see you again. Um, just as a quick icebreaker before we kind of go on to the content of this seminar, and of course we've got a lot of really awesome upperclassmen here to share all of their advice for your upcoming first year at the MSTP. Very exciting, but it can also be a little bit scary. So just as a quick icebreaker, just like name, where you're from, and like a fun hobby or something cool about yourself. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So my name is Jack Prochnow. I'm a current GS2 in the program. I'm originally from Boulder, Colorado. And because I'm from Boulder, Colorado, I grew up with a lot of hiking. So that's probably like my biggest hobby and interest is going hiking. Not a whole lot here in Texas, unfortunately, but there's still really good trails. So I still like exploring the city whenever I can. But yeah, but
On the spot. I'm Otto. I interact with most of you through like the group me or message me or stuff. So I just finished my MS 1 year, so I'm a rising MS 2. I'm originally from San Diego, California. And a hobby, I really enjoy cooking. The cleanup part, not so much, but I really like it.
Hi, I'm JR. I'm originally from Seoul, South Korea, and I guess I kind of lost a lot of my hobbies, but right now, right now I'm starting like my garden is doing really good. Like now that it's summer and I feel my heart is getting recommended. So yeah.
I'm Annie. I guess GS2 now. Weird. I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, and hobby. I don't really do it much anymore, but I was a big skydiver.
someone take the helm, or I'll call someone.
Okay.
All right.
I'm Isaiah. I'm out of Texas, and I've been trying to read a lot more, so I'm like 22nd book of the year.
Wow, right.
Wow. I'm Harrison. I came from University of Michigan, so I was from in Michigan before this. I like making fried rice.
Nice.
Oh yeah. My name is Ian. I'm from San Antonio, so like a little bit. Next one hobby. Not really a hobby, but I went to Europe for the first time like this summer.
Where'd you end up going?
So fun fact, I went to Sicily, where like Mount Etna's, and he like saw the music and just throughout it. So like I have a picture of me like 2 weeks ago, like on the same spot where like tourists are running away.
Wow. Very, very interesting.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm from Dallas, and one of my hobbies is martial arts, specifically Taekwondo. I did for over a decade. So
Nice.
Is there more than just Taekwondo?
And this looks something Lucas would do.
I think someone does martial arts. I don't know if it's Taekwondo, but martial arts.
Yeah. Don't do that. Yes.
you did.
Okay. Yeah. We know someone.
Hi everyone, my name is Danny. I originally come from Saigon, Vietnam. This is like the south of Vietnam. 8 years ago, I went to university. I went to Pitt and then come to like University of Pittsburgh, like not that point, but yeah. And then I attend like University of Pittsburgh, and I'm coming here. So my hobby on the interview, I would say that I play piano and guitar. Yes, that's one my good hobby. My bad one are chess.com and
Oh, yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you put ketchup on there?
I'm sorry.
Do you put ketchup on?
Ketchup on chess.com?
On fried rice.
Yeah.
I mean, if I do bad spelling and I don't have MSG that day,
I was gonna say.
My name is Victor. I'm from McAllen, Texas, and my favorite hobby is playing soccer, watching soccer, going into soccer games.
Nice.
Hi everyone, I'm Shreyas. I'm from San Jose, California originally, and I come to college in Boston and I come to university. And some of my hobbies are like video games and like quantity.
Nice. What kind of video games?
Halo.
Halo. All right. Yeah. It's been a while since I've played that game. Okay, so the way that we're going to kind of do this, we're just going to go over each individual slides. feel free to just jump in, interrupt at any point if you have a question. The panel here also, again, feel free to just interrupt at any point. This is to kind of segue into the theme of this seminar, which is, if I can get my computer to actually function. There we go. So I've been trying to develop something called the South Texas Student Seminar Series, and it's because as a student who has gone through this program, there are many different really critical milestones that I feel like don't get enough sort of advice coming down from upperclassmen to make that journey a little bit easier. And so I've been trying to develop this as I've been going through, writing down my own thoughts as well as getting into the thoughts of others to really outline which every milestone is, really detail it, some advice on it. So like, for example, like you'll see there's a seminar for prep for step. If I gave you a seminar on step 1 right now, do you think you would even remember like anything I was talking about in the next 2 years where you'll actually take it? No. So like these are actual detailed seminars pointedly for you guys or gals who are entering in at the program or entering at different points in the milestones. So if you ever see this little snake mascot on there, I'm still trying to develop that out there. You're in for some really good information. Try to pay attention if you can. So again, this is designed by students for students. So if you have any kind of feel like there's an opinionated thing or worry about like a faculty kind of like sterilization of something, this is being presented by us. So it's the real deal. Okay, so some lighthearted stuff before we go into some of the scarier content of first semester. So welcome to San Antonio if you haven't been here before. Pretty beautiful shot of the Riverwalk there. I know some people will say it doesn't look quite that beautiful, but I really enjoy going down there. It's a lot of fun. So do go there when you can. There's a lot of things to see. And of course, these PowerPoint slides, they're going to be available to you. You don't have to be taking notes or anything right now. It should be just shared with you. You'll have access to it. But it's a really big city. We're like the 7th biggest city population wise. We've got a lot of really fun attractions from water parks, theme park rides. We've got little shopping districts that are really nice. So teach them like there's pop golf or whatever, like there's tons of really fun activities here, either food or activity wise, indoor or outdoor. So feel free to look around. There's something that'll catch your eye, I think. Again, like some really cool museums as well. So the Whit, I can never say it right, museum was really fun. I went to that recently. The Museum of Art is also really good. So again, just a really broad, diverse array of things that are available in the city while you're here for almost a decade. Similarly, lots of really fun outdoors things. So I mentioned I like going on hiking trails. Again, there's not a whole lot of elevation in Texas, but there's still some really good trails around here. So if you're someone who likes to do some outdoorsy things when it's not 100+ degrees outside, there's still some really cool trappings around the city. I think this is I can't remember where this picture was taken. I think this is Brackenridge Park. No, it's not Brackenridge Park. This is the historical park, I believe, the bottom one. I can't remember exactly where this is taken. I did when I originally made this presentation. I'm sorry, I can't remember that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm now going to touch upon the very first thing that you're doing when you enter this program, which is your summer research rotation. I'm sure this has been spouted at you before. You only get 3, maybe 4, depending, generally kind of 3. Kind of finish settling in, move in, get your mojo of like, places you like to go to eat, shop, things like that, figure out those things. And then while you're in these rotations, I think you just want to be determining fit, right? So there's a balance in most labs where you have sort of the culture and environment of the lab on one hand, the people who are running the lab, the people who are in that lab, how you jive with them, and then feasibility and interest of those projects. And ideally, weigh those very carefully. So do you see yourself in the future, day-to-day, living, working with these fellow lab members, doing the project that you are doing? And so sometimes like you have to weigh like, somewhat of the intrigue of that project versus like the culture of the lab. My personal opinion on that is like, I think really look for culture above anything else. Because again, it's a very long time that you're going to be in this lab. So you want to be able to jive with who's in the lab.
Also,
Go ahead.
I know firsthand what project you're told you can work on might change.
Yeah, it can.
So like, I would definitely say lab environment.
Yeah.
Like,
I have a quick question. So I'm in a situation where, for my lab, like Sarah, she's like graduating, and then we have like few like graduate students, but like they are like 2 years old.
Yep.
So I would imagine, and we don't have any postdoc there, so I would imagine that the lab culture is going to be like very different.
It can
So
change.
like, how can you like approach that?
So very good question. Absolutely, you will have students coming into and out of the lab. first and foremost, who's always going to be tuning the culture of the lab? The PI, right? So the PI is going to have a general hand, not in the full culture of the lab, but is a general kind of overarching member of like how the lab is going to be tuned and how things are run, generally speaking, right? And then when it comes to postdocs, yeah, if there's no postdocs, usually they would be the longer members of the lab if there's none in the lab. It can be a little bit hard to tell then if students who are entering and leaving, if that culture is going to stay the same. I feel like culture tends to have momentum in that, like, even if you have members coming and going in, that culture is sustained.
Well, there's
but
overlaps every time. And
yeah, there's always an overlap.
But the other thing too, you're just starting, you have 2 years before you start your PhD. You can continue going to lab meetings and stopping by and keeping in contact, even if you like, you're pretty set on that lab, or even you're not, you want to just leave like a longer period of time. Because then that way, as people come and go, you can also see how that grows over the next few years. Because
The average PhD is 6 years. So
Yep.
if you have 2 right now,
They'll still be there.
Probably will still be there, yeah.
Absolutely.
And also keeping in mind that even like there are ways to determine lab culture or like personality fit without necessarily doing a rotation. For example, the lab in Rome we were sitting in, I attended a lab meeting first to see kind of what the vibe was. And then I was like, okay, this is good. I will rotate here. And so because for me, I am by nature fairly indecisive. And so I was like, I want to gauge like all of my options. So I think if there was a PI you're interested in, but you're not sure you want to kind of use that rotation on them, I think maybe having a conversation with them, like going to the lab meeting or something, is a kind of a low stakes way to gauge what the culture of the lab might be like.
Or talking to current students, if you
Yep.
know that like if there's an lab, it's really bad, help you what's what, or even if it's try to get things to be free for on the lab, you figure out the lab.
Yeah.
Answer, you know.
Yeah. And so that leads to a secondary idea of, okay, so let's say I love the culture of the lab, I love the project. Can I do a love at first sight kind of deal where I just continue doing the same rotation summer after summer? So like all 3 of your rotations are in that same lab. You can. That's what I did actually. So my love at first sight lab was Dr. Rao's lab. It was my very first rotation. I talked to him. I was like, hey, I really love the lab, love the projects. Is it okay if I kind of more or less commit to the lab? And he agreed. And so I spent the rest of my MS1 and MS2 basically either fully rotating in the lab in the times when those rotations are open, or just casually going into lab during MS1 and 2 to help do some research. And that really helped. So I was able to co-first author 1 paper and get authorship on a couple others. So there are advantages if you continue doing research in a singular lab. It makes the PhD in some ways a little bit easier or off the jump a little bit faster. But that doesn't mean that you should be like gunning for like, okay, I need to find my favorite lab, best lab first, or I need to commit if maybe that the jive wasn't too good. So you have that option. You can either just try to sustain that same lab, or you can still do multiple lab rotations. It's up to you, but you do have to actually have more or less a contract with that PI if you're going to be continuing to commit those lab rotations. Otherwise, if say you've done all 3 of your lab rotations and the PI is like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have the funding for you, that puts yourself in a really bad spot, right? So usually the program, like Jennifer Cavazos, will not let you do like continuous rotations in that lab unless they have assurances from the PI that they're going to be able to take you on. Any questions on that? So you have your options. You can either do several rotations in the same lab, or you can mix and match your rotations. And a question that I get a lot from MD PhDs coming in is, should I be mixing research during MS1? Because that's what I kind of did. And my answer to that is a resounding no, especially first semester. First semester, I heavily advise against you doing any kind of research whatsoever. First semester is not only a little bit harder in our program because we front some of the coursework towards first semester, but you're learning how to be a medical student for the first time when you're in first semester of medical school, right? So there's a lot of learning and learning how to learn that needs to be done in MS1 first semester. And so my advice, stay away from research. If your PI is like, for whatever reason, trying to pressure you into coming back into the lab during MS1 first semester, you tell them, I'm a medical student right now, like I need to be focusing on doing well in medical school first, of course, right? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, would strongly agree.
No.
So I agree in that we should never mix research. I guess like I didn't like mixing research my second semester either. I think everyone said the first semester is really tough and the second semester it gets better. But then because everyone said that, I think everything started second semester and I was like, oh, so like there's like a bunch of different extracurriculars
Yeah.
all starting and I already like kind of semi-committed into like doing a little bit of research second semester too. And I think because of that, like towards the end of second semester, I was like, this is a lot. I probably shouldn't have done this. I don't like it.
Yeah. And like that's not to say like, oh, research is your end all be all extracurricular. Like you can absolutely find, you can do more shadowing, you can be more involved in student government. And usually when second semester does come up, like that's when you have more of the schedule or flexibility in your schedule to be able to contribute to those extracurriculars. But MS1 first semester, I would say more or less keep your head down, make sure you know how to succeed in medical school first so that you can stay at a high pace throughout the rest of the medical school curricula. And then once first semester ends, because again, it's very packed with a lot of time consuming things, we'll get to it. Second semester comes around, you'll have a little bit more time to then start focusing on extracurriculars.
This is the last slide for like summer stuff, Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, so I also do want to emphasize, like as the bullet point that was there about like settling in. I think it's really important to get like a routine down during the summer, like because I kind of took my summer off apart from the rotation, but I would really encourage figure out what's the best sleeping time for you, waking up time for you, if you want to meal prep, that kind of thing, because once medical school starts, it starts like. Yeah, like there's like, you know how like college there's like an orientation week for like the first like week of the semester. There's an orientation 2 days about for med school for like syllabus stuff, and then they drop you in like that day, and not even 2 days, like orientation hour maybe, and then immediately they start a lecture. So you want to make sure that you start off on a really strong foot from the first day of medical school. So if you that's the best time to like get to know yourself, or if for whatever reason like you have stuff in your apartment that doesn't work, best time to take care of it would be like during the summer. So definitely just start off on a really strong foot the instant medical school starts.
Yeah, it definitely does like 0 to 100 the second you start preclinicals. So very quickly, because navigating the Canvas page can sometimes be a little bit weird. A lot of really useful resources can be buried. And so I just want to point out the very first one, which is in your Canvas page, MS class of 2026. So sad my class is actually going to be gone really soon. Yeah, I know, isn't it? You can go to this page right here, and there's a ton of really, like, especially if you need to do an excused absence, this is the portal where you go to do that excused absence if you're sick or your car breaks down, something like that. That's the resource where you can go in for it. Student advising, again, like you can just see like really useful resources on your main Canvas page for the class of X, right? And we'll go more into like the other hidden like really big gems in a couple different modules, because like modules like LOM will have tons and tons of resources on their Canvas page that sometimes go underexplored. Like, what's that thing? I had no idea what what's that thing is, and we'll talk about it in just a moment. But incredibly useful resource. I didn't know it existed for quite a long time.
Pretty sure, so this is like the main class page, and then there's like a different page for each of those modules. And I'm pretty sure those open like the Wednesday night before the next module starts on the Monday. I used to spend like a couple days before the module, like going in and like checking out the Canvas page, like downloading some like stuff. And just making sure like I knew what was going on, and if there was anything hidden that I didn't miss it. So that can be a good idea too.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's the sidebar now.
It's on the sidebar? Okay. Yeah. So the Canvas page might have been like slightly remodeled, but it's still there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And there's actually a new student resource page. The hyperlink is here. I don't have the URL just posted, but again, like it just gives you a ton of resources of like, hey, if you are interested in doing some research, here's some research outlook. If you're like trying to do student life, it's there. So like this page right here, resources for medical students, they like literally just came out with this. I've been going through all their various links that are very, very, very helpful.
And so I'm actually involved with like making this page. If there is a resource that is missing that you would like to see, let me know. I will let them know to update it.
Yeah. So like anything from like housing to scholarships. I mean, scholarships for us are not as quite as applicable, but there's just so much info on this page. Yeah. Okay. So awesome. Okay. Now to talk about the 4 horsemen of first semester. So we've got language of medicine, M2M, A&D, and clinical skills. So these are the classes that you're going to be taking first semester bleeding into second semester. And the reality of MS1 first semester is that, again, I'm going to reiterate, it's tough. Like there is a ton of time management that you're going to have to relearn or learn or just reinforce during the time that you're in first semester, and of course the rest of preclinicals. And again, why is that? So one is it's the pace of medical school learning that's already really hard. And two is you're very new to it. Three, you're completely new here. So like you maybe don't have the same support systems that you had before, friends that you moved away from, family you moved away from. And so a lot of that can be a little bit isolating. So that transitionary period can be rather rough for a lot of people. And I'll say this as a sidebar, if you ever have like any like personal mental health worries, we have free therapy services here. The student services here are really, really great. They are all free for you. So if you are ever in a crisis, well, you're not, we have a ton of resources here that are available to you. And they are free and confidential. So if that ever comes up, just be aware of that. Semester schedule is very, very packed, and previous study strategies may or may not work. So for myself, I was very much a like pen and paper kind of guy. I had to write all my notes down. I tried that for the 2 weeks of first semester, and I could not keep up pace-wise. And I was like panicking because like my first 2 quizzes were not great. And I was like, holy cow, this is not good. I then had someone help me with Anki, and I'm gonna just say right now, because I'm biased, I'm a huge Ankier now. I swapped to Anki, figured out how to use it, and I was able to do extremely well throughout the rest of the module with the Anki tool. So we'll talk a little bit about Anki as well. And I think you use a lot of Anki. I think you don't use Anki. Do you use Anki? Or a little bit?
A little bit,
Yeah.
which is not the right way of saying it.
Yeah, so be prepared. Like if a study strategy does not work for you, don't feel like you have to adhere to it because it worked for you prior, or if there is a study strategy someone is recommending to you, give it a shot. Because actually, way back when I was trying to figure out how to study for the MCAT, I tried to download Anki, fiddled around with it for like 3 minutes, did not understand it, and then deleted it. And I was like, man, I regret that decision. That probably would have helped me a lot on the MCAT. Okay, and again, time. So like you're just gonna find a lot of your day, you're gonna get home at like 6 o'clock, you're gonna be exhausted. And that's the time period when you should probably actually be studying even more. So a lot of time management is gonna have to start being drilled into your brain. Just like, can you think of like little podcasts to listen to or lectures to listen to, like even while you're cooking or eating or going to the gym? There's so many different ways that you can fill in learning even while you're doing other really important things. Okay, so what to do about it?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
With the donkey, like, you know, like how most people like this, that like, when I found the people to be like, my own donkey, but I thought that's pretty good. People like,
Yeah.
so much information.
Yeah. So my advice is, because there's such a mountain of material, making Anki cards for all that material would be, and staying up to date, like with, or up to speed with all of your course content, that would be almost impossible. It would be really difficult. And people have already made, like, there's standardized decks like On King. There's the really popular On King deck that's extremely well made. And we have our own in-house Anki decks made by a student who is above us called Pecan. Pecan deck, it's obviously not as great as the On King deck, but it's still tagged. It's very thoroughly made.
It's specific.
And it's specific to our content. Yeah. So my advice, use the tools that have already been made for you and use them well. You can make your own Anki cards, but the amount of time you'd have to dedicate towards that is a lot. Yeah.
I had downloaded the Arcane deck, which was the national one. Then I downloaded the deck, which is like our cool one. You can edit them. So like personalize it, get rid of cards that aren't serving you, that like, you don't want to be doing cards over and over again that like aren't working for you. So it helps you to edit them. Editing a pre-made deck that's already kind of like structured and tagged for your class is gonna be a lot. It's not gonna take as much time as starting from scratch, right? So like if you like personalizing your cards, you can totally do that. But I'd say like start with some sort of like framework.
Yeah, agreed. Like the most dedicated Ankiers in our year that I know will largely stick to Onking and then maybe add a few cards in for like low yield stuff to go over in lecture specifically, but not in Onking, or they'll tweak existing cards. But yeah, definitely go with the decks that already exist, because I don't think it'll be sustainable to make your own cards throughout.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to have another question about like the philosophy of like learning here. So basically, like high view and like low view content. And what I mean by that is that there are some of the contents that, let's just say this 80% that's going to be the content, we should like predominantly like study them, and then just some of the details that, you know, like people who want to remember them, it's gonna take a lot of time, but like. You can.
I can address this because we were more recently in this once. So it's very lecture dependent on how clear they're going to be about whether it's high yield or not. Some of the like in hopefully she sticks around for attack and defense for you guys, but one of our professors, Dr. Dixon, makes it very clear on her review slides, like in red, like you should know this, or like start like slides would be like starred or something. So unfortunately, there's no consistent way to know what is and is not going to be high yield. But generally speaking, lecturers will, during like weekly reviews or something, like hit something again and again and again. Or if like they put out like 10 review questions per week on the constant of the week, we see something that comes back a bunch, like, oh, this one specific mutation, like then you should remember that. Like, but inevitably on the exams there are going to be like one random detail where it's like, did you read this or did you not? And if you did, you lucked out. If not, it is what it is. But generally speaking, like more often than not, it'll be clear what's high yield and what isn't.
Yeah. And there's always going to be learning objectives associated with every lecture. However, those learning objectives are pretty broad, and they can only make exam questions based off of those learning objectives. But because those objectives are so broad, they can more or less just extraneously say like, yeah, this is related to this objective, even though it's very finely connected. Yeah, so did you have more?
One last thing to that end, like this will become more relevant when we're actually in class, but for a lot of things, they'll have like very specific buzzwords, especially in attack and defense, but more in recent like org units as well. They're like, oh, for like digoxin, you have like yellow-green vision, and then like they said that specific wording like later on, and you immediately click that like, oh, this is a connection that I've made. So they'll be clear about buzzwords. So that if you're like really running low on time, if there's something else going on in your life, just have the buzzwords be the most important thing that you look at.
Absolutely, yeah. And so coming back to the direct study slides. So focusing on the class is really important, and just really respect the amount of time commitment that this journey needs. So I was mentioning it a little bit before y'all came in, but in undergraduate, most everyone in like our educational system, for relatively smart people, like pretty low burden of having to dedicate time towards studying, maybe some peaks when you're having to do quizzes and such, bigger peak when you're doing a midterm like dead week or whatever, you're really focused. Really bad idea to go into medical school with that mindset. Like if you want to really succeed in medical school, it takes a lot of just really high level consistency the whole time, because week to week, it's just such an enormous amount of content that if you feel like you're just like wanting to stay lax on it, maybe you'll study the night before, Saturday, Sunday for the weekly quiz. Even then, you would still really struggle with the weekly quiz because there's just so much material that they could have covered on that week. So be prepared going into medical school that you should think of every day, every week as more or less like a cram day, a cram week, not to the extreme extent, but really putting the reps in every day to make sure that you're following the content and you're keeping pace with it, because the pace is really fast. Any on that? Okay. So again, yeah, develop the study strategies that work for you. If they aren't working, identify, abandon them or tune them, find other study strategies. There's something that'll work for you. There is. And you can either ask fellow upperclassmen what ideas they have, or even student learning advisors who are here to basically figure out, okay, what can work for you, what isn't working for you. And the last point here, even though it's probably the most thing I want to emphasize, is reaching out to upperclassmen about their experiences in each class. They have so many pearls of wisdom for you heading into that class, because not every class is going to have the same taste or flavor. Like sometimes you'll have a class where Anki is really, really useful and you can just coast on that the whole time. Maybe it's not so efficient and you have to look at other resources. Or just certain like video lectures, like the lectures themselves are just super high yield, super well done, and you just like, they're just such a gold gem to really focus on. So pay attention to what your upperclassmen say, because they're always going to have really good advice for you. Of course, weigh it if it seems very opinionated, then draw wisdom from many different wells. Otherwise, it becomes stagnant and stale. Okay, cutting to the chase, give Anki a shot. My advice, how many of you have used Anki, like tried Anki? Hey, all right, half of you. Okay, yeah. What was the context you were using Anki? MCAT? MCAT? How was it? It's okay.
It was great. I
Great.
started using it for my classes, and then it was like even easier.
Yeah. So statistically, and like, wow, we're even close to this statistic even now, is like it's been pulled nationally, and at the school I've checked, roughly 60% of medical students use Anki as a primary study tool. So there's a reason why 60+% of us use Anki, either primarily or secondarily, is because it's a really dang good tool for studying the kind of content that medical school prescribes to you. And I was just mentioning it again. If a module has a certain flavor, adjust your studying accordingly. Like for A&D, the big flavor of that is extremely relevant to third-party resources and sketchy. Sketchy is an incredibly useful video resource that really hammers in a lot of really high-yield material. Sketchy does exist for other modules and other content, but the best it's applied for is A&D. Don't compare your study strategies or habits to others, especially if they seem extremist. So someone who says like, oh man, I do like 3,000 cards a day, or I wrote down every word in lecture and reviewed it 3 times. 100% that's hyperbole. But do like see how they're studying, because maybe you can get some pearl from that. But like, don't feel bad. It's like, man, I only did 800 cards yesterday, and feel bad that you only did 800 cards, because that's still actually a lot of cards and is realistic. So fine tune that a little bit. I'm sure you're used to like some peers like exaggerating how they've been studying, but it's very prevalent in medical school, in my opinion. So don't feel bad about like, you're not studying 24/7 in their way, and like they're honoring every class with ease, right?
Also the part of report. And so 2 people could be both on or doing the same class.
Yep.
Using very good, that's why I think comparing in so far as it helps you develop your like optimal study strategy, but like certain stuff is not going to help you just because everyone else is doing it.
Definitely.
Like everyone's baseline is like very different. Like for me, I tried Anki on multiple occasions, like for modules, just was not working for me. So I would go to lecture on my iPad, like write stuff down during lecture and then review it like 2 or 3 times. Not every word in lecture, but it worked for me, and that was the most important thing. And then like 3 months into med school, I got an ADHD diagnosis, and I was like, oh, that's what was going on. But point being, like, yeah, everyone's baseline is different. And so for people who are like, oh, this class is like extremely easy for me, number one, they might just straight up not be telling the truth. And number two, like everyone's levels are very different, regardless of where they are.
Absolutely. And to the bottom point, again, squeezing in studying time is super helpful. So like all of our lectures are recorded, so you can always be listening to a recording while you're like eating, doing dishes, doing housework, going to the gym, or what have you. One study strategy that I used to stay active, and I did a lot of this during step 1 studying, was I went to Gold's Gym. They have these treadmills that have like a little thing that you can put your laptop or whatever on. I would be there for like 2 hours doing cardio, just like doing cardio and doing all my cards. So I did my cardio cards for the day. And it didn't feel like I was in prison just sitting in a chair all day. I actually got to do a little bit of cardio as well. So hey, you can have, and hey, that's with Anki too. So like you can multitask with Anki, which I really like. You can do some fun things. Okay, now we're actually getting into the module specific content. So language of medicine. Language of medicine is your anatomy and physiology class, and that is going to be coupled with dissections. Dissections happen in the early afternoon, and they can bleed into the later afternoon or evening, depending on the speed, efficiency, and preferences of your tank mates. So you will be assigned tank mates. Total of 4 people are going to be in your tank, so you have 3 other people. You will all be working on various dissections that have been scheduled for that week. And again, you feel free to jump in at any time, because again, I've been a little bit further away from these modules at this point. So some people, this is a little bit of a hyperbole, but so some people ascribe the exams as being somewhat Galen-like. So you will start becoming familiar with Galen questions, which is this kind of Q bank that we ascribe to all of the medical students. You have like a weekly Galen quiz. The exams are definitely tougher than Galen, so I would fine tune when people say like, hey, the exams are like, or upperclassmen who say like exams are Galen-like. Yeah, there's obviously some similarity, but they're definitely a little bit trickier on the exam. My opinion and the opinions of many, many people in medical school is do the clinical, again, I don't know if this is still up to date. You do the clinical correlations for your choice of aim. So you're going to be assigned an aim in this module. Basically, you have to do one of 3 or 4 activities. So you'll either have to like read a document and then do like a paper or a thesis on it. That's one aim. There's like doing some very specific, I think, clinical services for another aim. And then another aim is going to patient derived lectures. So they'll bring patients who have some condition of some sort, usually like after dissections or before dissections. You get to listen to their story. You'll have like a brief quiz afterward, not a quiz, but you'll just basically talk about what was discussed, what was interesting about this condition or the patient's story. it's the easier aim. And again, like when it comes to first semester, you're really going to try and have to find ways of like getting time back, and the clinical correlations is one of the easier ones.
Yeah, they're also actually like quite cool. Like one of the ones that came in was like a plastic surgeon, and so she showed us like multiple different reconstructive like cases that she did, which was super cool. One of them was like I think like a fetal surgeon or something. One of them like did like it was super cool. So even if you didn't have to go to them for the AIM project, I still feel like they're worth going to. And then so on Galen, so you'll be given a flash drive. If I don't think they've given it out already. I think it's during a white code rehearsal.
Yeah.
But so all the Galen question bank is on that. And so the like there's the way it's supposed to be used and the way it's actually used. So you'll get a Galen quiz every Monday. That's 10 questions from they'll tell you which lectures you're going to be quizzed on. And so you could, in theory, just Anki memorize all of the answers for the lectures for that week and then get your guaranteed 100 on that quiz. The technical use case and what I actually end up doing before the midterm, the final, is go through every single Galen question for the lectures that are going to be tested and then understand why every answer choice is right or wrong. That you will have time to do before the exam, but not before every Galen quiz. So I would say that, yeah, like prior to each quiz, just like go through the lectures, memorize like the correct answers, and then get your 100. And then for the actual exam, understand why every answer is correct, is right or wrong, because it genuinely is a very, very useful study tool. There's like, I think for the final, there ended up being like 2,800 questions of just like exam level. If you know the questions well enough and you know the principles behind it, you will do well in the final. Yeah, I think by like Galen maxing, I quite literally boosted my exam grade from the first midterm. I did not do very hot. In the final, I was like, I swear to think a full 30% higher than I did in the midterm because I knew every Galen question by heart and why it made sense. So cannot endorse that enough.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then again, I want to reiterate, like explore, especially for like LON, the full campus page. So you see down here, that's Dr. Sakaguchi. He made What's That Thing? So What's That Thing? Do I have I don't, unfortunately. So I don't have a slide specifically showing What's That Thing is, but it's literally this really extremely well documented list of anatomical landmarks and questions by Dr. Sakaguchi that will basically be like, if they pin the structure like this for what's that thing? That's how they pin it in the practical exam. I didn't mention this before, but you're gonna have two different kind of styles of exams in language of medicine. You're gonna have your written finals or midterm, and then you're gonna have your practical. The practical is when you are going to the dissection lab. They will have pin structures, and it could be a first order question like, what is this muscle? And it'll just have a pin there. You'll have to know that muscle. Is it the subscap? What have you? And there could be second order questions of, okay, what nerve innervates this structure? So one, you'll have to identify what's even pinning in the first place, and then you'll have to know what is innervating that muscle or whatever. So there are two different components of the exams that are here for language of medicine. But yeah, like Dr. Sakaguchi's material for What's That Thing? Really, it just covers a whole lot of material. It's really great for like fine-tuning your anatomical knowledge.
And then also, sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention, like, for all these things, just paying attention to what Anki decks are getting circulated at the beginning of the year, because they'll have the Galen deck where all the Galen put their telephones, and then they'll have the What's That Thing deck, which has all the different. And then there's also a blue deck that goes around, which is like What's That Thing is more based on like the illustrations for anatomy, and Blue Link actually has the cadaver images. So if you look at those of them, then they really well possible.
And I think the Netter Atlas is a really good resource to study from,
No.
because they will try to make the pins look like Netter. And so like, for example, there was like the greater splanchnic nerve. I distinctly remember the tag because I had memorized the Netter image so clearly, and they pinned it pretty much the exact same way on the final. So I don't know if they still sell them, but I had Galen flashcards from like an older relative, and that like, I mean, it's literally just Anki, but like I carry them around and go through them when I was walking the class and stuff. But yeah, I would recommend using Netter as a study tool as well, apart from actually being in the lab and looking at the cadaver.
No, absolutely. Some other gems, this is more on the dissection side of things for tips for LOM. Okay, so obviously you're gonna have pre-dissection videos for each dissection. They're gonna be going over very quickly, basically all of the different parts of the dissection that you'll be covering, all the structures that you should be finding. My advice, as soon as you are down in that anatomy lab, you have the scalpels in hand, get your hands dirty. And by that, I mean actually do the dissections. A lot of the time I see people get assigned in a sense. So some people are spectators. They don't really do a whole lot of the dissection. And other people, maybe because they're a little bit more go-getter about it, they go straight into the actual dissection. They do the hands-on work. The advantage of doing the hands-on work, even though that, and was that a question?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. The advantage of that is when you're working more with your hands-on, you're really paying attention, you really see the structures, you're finding the structures, and it really helps you on the practical. So even if you're maybe a little bit squeamish about handling a cadaver or a dead person for the first time, hopefully in your life, you really should be getting your hands dirty and doing the work, because it really reinforces what you're learning and what you're trying to find. At the same time, try to have as many hands on the body as possible. So usually in some dissections, it can only be one. Like if you're in a really restrictive area like the head, it's hard to get. But like first dissection you're going to have is the back. The back is a lot of work. And having all 4 hands on that is really helpful because these dissections can go for hours, depending on how fast or slow your group is. And finding those structures efficiently is really, really important to, again, buying back time for yourself in the evening so you can go home, shower off all the phenol, and then study, eat, do whatever else you need to do for the day. So be efficient with these dissections. If you are stuck finding a structure, you can call, there's tons of TAs, there are MS4s who just destroyed the class that are super amazing. They can teach it really well. You can call a TA over or a professor over, say, I cannot find the facial nerve, like, please help me. And they'll find it in 2 seconds flat. Like it's crazy how fast that they can find these structures. And again, like they dissect it very well. So if you get stuck, don't feel afraid to like just call someone over for help because it's very, very helpful to have them in the dissections when you're doing them. My final point, and it's in red for a very important reason, getting a dissection or practical exam tutor is so helpful. It's the highest possible yield thing. It's going to cost you like $20 or something, maybe over a couple of sections. It is so helpful. You'll probably hear this from many upperclassmen, get a tutor for the practical exam or post dissections. They go through all the structures really cleanly. They show you like how a tag might be presented to you, how they might pin a structure for a dissection. Go find a tutor and schedule them early because sometimes because this is information that gets disseminated quickly and there's not a whole lot of them, their bookings get filled up very quickly. So yeah.
It was pretty dead up until the first exam, and then once everyone did the first exam, we were like, oh crap. Then it started to book, and it always books up right before the next exam. So it's like if you're on the schedule, like from day one, and if you have like, I used to do 1 tutoring session per like week of dissections, and we just go over what we learned in that section. Then that way, when you're studying for the exam, like things are better than if you were to start the week before the exam and do a couple of tutoring sessions where you're trying to cram everything.
And then Rahimi might say something like, oh, you're limited to like 1 a week or something. Don't listen to that.
Don't listen to that.
Yeah, like because I made the mistake of listening to that like early on, and then I talked to some of the TAs like, no, you can get as many as you want now. So like get as many as you need, possibly even more, because it is so helpful.
Very.
He makes it sound really scary. He was like, we will like block you from signing up if you keep on signing up. And I was like, that was a lie. Did not listen. Lost so many tutoring spots, and then everyone else who like actually went to lecture and listened to him like did not like get in time.
Also, the tutors, they switch a couple times throughout the semester, but you might mesh really well with one specific tutor. If like I used to do the tutoring in a tank, but like you could do it with your friends.
Yeah.
But like we got to the point where we liked a certain tutor, and then us as a tank would go to that specific tutor, and they would often open up extra hours that weren't on the cover sheet for us because they liked us. So it's like to get to know the tutors, like be nice to them, and like they say I think it's like $5 a person, but sometimes like if they did a really good job, like give them a tip or something like that, because it was like Venmo, like so I Venmo them, like,
it's very casual, like
it's very casual, but like dude, if you are really nice and you're super like into the tutoring session, they'll often like help you out and add a couple extra hours to their like time that we.
Yeah. Anything else?
Can I ask, like, so where can you find this tutor? Either like, where we on the tutor website or is it like?
So there was a spreadsheet that they generally link, I think, on the Canvas page. Either that or they'll send out an email, but yeah, and all the tutors are all the TAs that will be kind of circulating in class anyway. So like a worst case, if for whatever reason you can't find the link, just talk to one of them and they can send it to you or get that situated.
Okay, we're running a little short on time, so I'll try to speed through it a little bit faster. But again, if you have any important advice, everyone please speak up. So M2M, Molecules of Medicine, is the other first semester class that you're going to have. You can basically call it the undergraduate class on roids. It's just a lot of molecular biology, biochemistry, genetics. And if you are a biochem, biology, molecular biology major, you're going to think, oh, great, this is going to be an easy class for me. Don't fall into that trap of just because your major was in this category, like maybe 2 days of material will cover the material that you learned in your degree, but a lot of it is physiologically and more medically tuned. So even though, sure, you got a degree in this, our emphasis is obviously more on the medicine and medical applications. So do not like lower your guard if you're a STEM undergraduate master and not study as hard for this class because it'll catch up to you very quickly. So give this class the respect it deserves, even though it's going to be a lot of, it is going to be a lot of material that you have probably covered before, but do not let that lower your guard. Be okay with seesawing between M2M, LOM, and you're going to have clinical skills. So what I mean by that is you have all 3 of these happening at the same time, and then M2M might have a midterm or something coming up next week. Whereas LOM, they do a good job of this, doesn't really have a whole lot going on. Just be okay with like falling a little bit behind on LOM material and really focus on M2M because that's what you need to be focusing on at that moment so you can perform the best you can for that midterm or quiz or what have you. And they do a very good job of scheduling it. So like if there's something big and heavy coming for LOM, M2M is a little bit softer. M2M is something heavy coming on, LOM is going to be a little bit softer. So be okay with like, oh my God, I didn't catch up with like this entire week's material of LOM because M2M's midterm is coming up. That's fine. Everyone is going through the same crisis right now of like, holy cow, I'm falling behind with one class. It's okay, you'll catch up. You can rack up more or less free points. So these are like protection points for you by making sure you do your histopathology and weekly quizzes really well. So the weekly quizzes are not easy, but if you're following the material very well throughout the week, you can usually score very highly with them. And very briefly, someone's probably already mentioned this to you. The way that quizzes are set up at our program is you have a I quiz or a T quiz. The I quiz is the individual quiz. It's worth about like 1/3 of the points of the total quiz grade. That is your individual quiz. So when we start the quiz, you're on your own, you fill out the 10 answers or whatever, you're done, 10 minutes is up, what have you. Then your team, which is your histopath team, your TBL team, comes together and then they go over the questions. So say you had a bad week and you don't really know the material very well and you bombed the I quiz, that's okay usually because usually your team can help out and usually recover a lot of those points that you might have lost. But of course, it's a team effort. So if no one did well on the quiz, then you're in even more trouble. And same with histopathology. So you'll have similarly like a quiz that you do beforehand. It's just on Canvas. It's pretty straightforward. And then you're gonna have a quiz after each of the histopathology lectures as a team where you'll fill that out. And it's always very good to know the histopathology because you don't want to have to rely on the one guy who just loves histopathology and no one else understands any of the questions that are being prompted, right? Because then it's like relying on one person to answer every single question correctly. You. So reality hits sometimes, yeah. Okay, next, midterm. So the midterm for MDM is going to be the first ever medical school exam that you take. Out of all the exams that I have taken in the preclinicals, it terrified me the most because I had no idea what a medical school midterm was going to look like. And it was so much fun. Like it was memory making because like it would be all of the MD PhDs of my year, like Aaron, Zach, Annie, like what have you. We'd be all up in the rooms, like writing pathways out. We didn't do that anymore at that point. But like everyone was just like, there's like this anxiety that builds up until the midterm because it's like it's an enigma. You don't know how hard it's going to be. And it's a fair exam. Like there's no exams here that are trying to like overtly trick you, be unfairly hard. If you do the work, you're going to do well. So it's going to be spooky, but you'll be fine. And so, okay, so some general tips. I think Otto mentioned one of them, which is trigger words are really abundant. So if they say that a certain disease or a certain pharmacological remedy for this disease causes this symptom or is used for this indication, there's like, it could be like onion skinning fibrosis or something like that. And you would instantly know what disease they're referring to. So they add lots of trigger words or words that are basically just directly associated with any singular disease in this first semester. So those will start to fade away once like second semester, not so much second semester, but like second year, and then especially step one. Step one is very good at like avoiding trigger words, unfortunately. They'll describe it, yeah.
He's getting like.
Yeah, consent, yeah.
Concentric.
So, but you can rely a little bit more on the trigger words that are common in medicine, at least for the first semester and second semester as well. Sometimes sometimes it's a stem, so it's a long question. Sometimes reading the last sentence or two first can really help, because sometimes it can be like the patient was started on ampicillin, and then the actual question is, what is the mechanism of action of ampicillin? So did you need to read like the entire like patient history and presentation at that point? Like, no, not really. It's because it's just asking like, what is the mechanism of action of ampicillin? So sometimes reading the question at the very end first can be helpful, not always, but that can maybe buy you a little bit of time. And then looking at the image first can oftentimes help, because again, like we present you very classical presentations of a disease, illness, or what have you. So sometimes you'll just immediately know it's like multiple myeloma just from the picture alone, and you don't really need to read too much of the presentation at that point. And again, if you do the work, I mean, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Everything's gonna be all right for these exams. Okay, clinical skills. How much time do I have? I'm probably very close. Okay, so clinical skills is a 2-year module. I like to call it like the half module for every single semester, because it's not nearly as much of a time investment or time requirement as like M to M or A&D or what have you. So the first thing that you're going to be doing is just basically learning basic history taking in all the basic labs. So you'll be learning how to do vital signs, the cardio exam, the renal exam, and then eventually second year, you're going to be doing the more advanced exams. So like the advanced genitourinary for male and female, the breast exam, things like that in second year. My advice, always listen to the SPs. SPs are standardized patients. They are real life people who have volunteered to let you do these exams on them, and they are trained for that examination. So they are very familiar with if you're doing something correct or incorrect, and listen to them, because if you're not, listening to the whole respiratory cycle when you're stethoscoping their back to listen to their lungs, you could lose points on the OSCE, which is, I'll get into the OSCE a little bit later. So pay attention to their little comments on whether you're doing something correct or incorrect. And of course, there's going to be doctors going around as well to also make sure that you're doing everything technique-wise correctly. And then practice makes perfect. So like, you're not going to have a lot of time with this. Like when OSCE does come up, it's just going to be like everyone's blitzing out all these exams to remember them. But the checklist, way down there, the checklist is all the required components of every single physical exam that you're performing. And in order to do perfect on the OSCE, you need to hit every single point of those, at least for the first OSCE you need to. As well as, so like that's just basically your definitive guide. So if you don't have someone who's willing to be your training dummy, you can also just do a pillow. So if you need to practice the abdominal exam, just have a pillow and fake that it's the abdomen of a patient, right? But it does help to actually go through the routine of the exam to help get the motions down. Okay, so what is the OSCE? OSCE is it's national. It's basically a clinical skills exam. So this is a blitz of all of the exams that you have learned. Basically, you're going to have a door. It's going to have a note, at least your first OSCE is basically say, do the PULM exam. And then you just walk in, you'll introduce yourself, and then you'll do the PULM exam. The second OSCE is where you're going to have to actually it's going to have to be a shorter time frame. You'll have to take a history, figure out what exams to perform in the first place, and then actually perform them correctly. So by OSCE 2, you're expected to do things much closer to a physician. OSCE 1, much more timid, basically just, can you do each of these exams correctly? So don't forget the trigger words. So sometimes it'll be like, I'm listening for heaves and lifts. So that would be on the checklist for like a cardio exam. And a real life doctor, when they're doing a cardio exam on you, they are not going to vocalize, I am listening or watching for heaves and lifts. That'd be a weird thing to hear a doctor say to just a patient normally. But it's a requirement on the checklist. And if you don't say that, verbalize that, that's a ding on your OSCE score. So make sure you're saying and doing all the correct things on your OSCE. Same with professionalism points. Are you knocking on the door and waiting for a response first? Did you introduce yourself first? Did you clean your stethoscope first? All of those tiny things that maybe aren't listed on the OSCE are still professionalism points that you can lose on the OSCE, so beware of that. Speed is absolutely king, and that means you have to practice a lot. So can you do the whole neuro exam, which is like one of the more comprehensive exams, in the 10 to 15 minutes that you have with the patient? that's a hard thing to do. And if you don't have it like very well memorized, you're probably not even gonna be able to finish the exam, and that's points off on your OSCE, right? So be very good at efficiently doing all of these exams that you're gonna be learning. Any notes on that? No? Okay. Okay, I actually had one for attack and defense. Okay, so attack and defense, because it's part of first semester, this is split into the immunology and component and a microbiology, like infectious disease component. I loved the micro one much more. So immunology, that first half of attack and defense, it's going to be basically kind of like the same flavor of M to M. You're going to be learning a lot of like how do T cells form, like what is like the communication between like of expression of like all the various interleukins for like sustaining or repressing function of CD4, CD8 positive cells, what have you. Excuse me. And you're going to be doing the same deal of seesawing between now A and D, LOM, and clinical skills. M to M has just been traded out. Clinical vignette questions are going to become much more common because, if you have a virus or a bacterium, you're going to have a patient coming in with symptoms of that infection or presentations of that symptoms, right? This leads me to some study strategies for attack and defense, especially for the infectious disease section. And I'm going to list it 3 times because you should not ignore this. This is so extremely helpful. Sketchy. This is one of the sketchies right here, which are these very vibrant, very pictographic representations of the illness that you are trying to learn. For example, and I have not been keeping up on my immunology cards, I already know this is the polio virus. I know that polio is a positive stranded virus because it's daylight out. I know it's a coronavirus family member because it has a little baby with a little pico flamingo, right? I can see that the flamingo has raised its legs, so that's the ascending paralysis that polio causes, and the respiratory distress that it causes as well. I see the statue of David here because it is a naked virus. I have the meningitis helmet here and this kid right here. All of these little bits of information that you would otherwise forget very rapidly or can't organize in your brain, now you've got something burned into your synapses for you to recall for all of these really high yield bits of information for each of these diseases. I cannot stress sketchy enough, especially for A&D. It's also very useful for many other modules, just not as useful, but it's still very good.
Because not only in the infectious disease part of A&D, it's not just bugs, it's also drugs. So bugs are drugs.
Yep.
And the sketchy is really good, honestly, for pharmacology for all of the modules. So the only thing besides A&D that I used sketchy for was drugs. So different drug classes, mechanism of action, and all the different drugs, side effects, and things like that. It's really good for that. People used it for all different modules, especially in the younger years, because it wasn't.
Sketchy wasn't free for us, but it's now free for you. Yeah, I know. We had to ethically resource them in another way.
Yeah, I seconded, like sketchy is like the gold standard for studying for during A&D. I used it for heme a little bit, which was fine, but yeah, majority, like A&D, stick to it. You are actively kneecapping yourself and not using sketchy during A&D.
And this is the one module, not the first half of A&D, but the second half of A&D is where you do not need to sit through lecture. Yeah. All the other modules, I think you'll be at a disservice if you don't go to lecture or you don't always watch the lecture later. Or go through the slides at least. The second half of A&D, I didn't watch a single non-required lecture the entire time and didn't miss anything because sketchy covered it so well. Not all modules, most modules will not be that third-party heavy.
And you can see at the very bottom, it's A&D is like the closest to third-party resources of any module you're going to take here.
So this can save you time in A&D. You're not doing all your third-party and you're on, and then also having to watch lecture. You can actually kind of drop the lecture level.
Dr. Dixon's final review slides, which is really high level, is straight from first aid.
Oh, yeah.
Control C, control.
Like copy and paste, like
yeah.
But yeah, so definitely give sketchy a shot. Use it for both the pharmacology. It's pretty good with the pharmacology as well, and of course the infectious disease. I cannot stress that enough. So I have a separate session on sort of setting up Anki, so you don't really have to do this now. We certainly don't have the time for it, but later on, I'm going to have another hopeful seminar for all of you, not just about Anki, making sure all of it's set up for y'all, but then just like other study tips and tricks as well. So we're not going to focus too much on that. But I will also just very briefly mention this bad boy right here, your little remote for Anki. So of the Ankiers, did you have a little remote for Anki? It is so useful because like your hand is like this on the keyboard the whole time, right? Now you have like a little controller, which is just like, okay, go next, or easy, hard. It's so much more portable, so much more easy. It's $20 and it's going to save you from a lot of carpal tunnel if you're doing thousands and thousands and thousands of these cards throughout the week. Get this remote controller like as soon as you can. Yeah.
Oh, but I also recommend like spending a little bit of money on buying the mobile.
Yeah.
Because I like having just like being on like honestly when I had like some speed time like on my phone. So when I was on put a lot of money on my phone. It also works on my iPad too, so then you're like on the phone.
Yeah. So get these little controllers. It was killing my wrist when I was doing Anki normally, but then having the little controller, oh my God, it was such a increase in the standard of living for my time during as a medical student.
And does the remote work for iPad as well, or?
Oh, really?
Zach could get it to work, I could not.
Yeah, it's Mac products. Don't trust Mac. The very last thing I'll point out before we'll just take questions very quickly, or if you have to be somewhere, be somewhere. Again, I want to emphasize this. So two of the members who are student learning specialists or part of the academic enhancement, Joe and Brent, they're so extremely nice. They're so extremely kind. They're really cool. You can schedule a meeting with them right now. You can. In fact, I advise all of you, find a time to meet with these individuals just to like touch base with them and be like, hey, I'm an incoming MS1. Tell me what it's going to be like to be an MS1 student. Tell me some maybe pitfalls that some MS1 students have. Some resources that are available. And maybe some of you might have a stigma of like from your clinical advisor or advisors from undergrad where they weren't super great, weren't super helpful. Not here. I guarantee you'll get a lot out of discussions with them. They are just so in tune with making sure or how to make sure medical students in particular succeed while they're here. Give them a shot. They're not going to bite you, I promise.
Yeah, they genuinely, excuse me, have your best interests in mind. Like, even if a recession might not be as productive for you, at the very least, if you're on the docket and like you have like trouble with something, you can come back to them and go, oh, I have that relationship, I have that rapport with you. So yeah, can strongly second that advice.
No. Okay, so that is the end. If you have any questions pending, feel free to raise them. If you have to be somewhere, feel free to go. But yep.
For all these cases, I guess right now.
Right now. It should be right now. Yep. No.
So, I mean, or the canvas painting, you're looking at that right now, or?
Canvas page, I don't know.
I don't think yet. I'll ask like the UME staff and see exactly when they are supposed to get Canvas access, but probably like a week or so before orientation, which will be like late July. Yeah, probably mid-July if I had to go.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It's probably a lot, right?
Oh, and then also, I guess like offhand, the 1 month that was the worst that I remember is November. That's when you've got A&D midterm, OSCE, some anatomy thing. I don't remember exactly what.
You get a Thanksgiving break, and it's not.
Yeah. So
it's a study break. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, like so I would strongly recommend telling your loved ones that for at least this Thanksgiving is going to be a rough one. And that was largely my experience, but